In today's video, we'll be breaking down the most important statistics for the month of July, as we just had a major monthly closure, also a quarterly closure as well. So we'll go over the higher term timeframes, and then I do want to actually start this one off with a very, very small revisiting of the lower term timeframes. If you recall from yesterday's video, we were looking for July to open up with a bit of a pullback, a little bit of downside, and I do believe that we're getting that right now. Bitcoin's come all the way down from about 108,100 yesterday to 106,600 as of right now. And does it go on for a little bit more? Probably yes. So in the short term timeframes, I do want to acknowledge that once again, Bitcoin has been stopped by this price action pivot here, which is coming in from the high of the 16th of June at just below 108,900. Now, Bitcoin has once again sold off from that region, adding validity to that as a nice pivot, meaning that, in the short term, Bitcoin has a little bit of downside here. We'll get into downside targets in just a moment. But before that, I do want to acknowledge very quickly that the daily time frame is going to see daily stochastic momentum flip to the downside for the first time since the past week and a half now. Assuming that Bitcoin closed today below about 107, even if it doesn't, we should be aware that the daily stochastic oscillator is in some pretty crazy territories right here. So, playing out a bit of a pullback from a region like this to be expected, alongside the red dot of destiny, adding further confluence with the DMI flip in that direction as well. So, if you're looking for a pullback, the open or the opening portion of July makes a lot of sense to me. And we can see some major areas of interest right on the board here. 106 was our level from yesterday, or 106,100. Also the daily 21 EMA. If Bitcoin does fail there, then I'm looking somewhere between about 103 to 104 region. Let's just call it 103.5. We'll get into perhaps some more interesting short-term downside targets from there, but that's actually going to correlate well with the monthly analysis. So now let's get into the monthly statistics here for July. As usual, I've gone through each and every prior July in Bitcoin's history and marked off all of the major statistics, and I've recorded them over here, which I will bring you to my spreadsheets. They're off the charts right now. You can see that I have actually once again not named the proper month properly. There we go. My OCD is overflowing right now. June goes to July indeed. And I want to first go over the major top end statistics here. So the major top end statistics are just your general sort of strike rate for closing a positive July, of which we've seen 15 prior Julys in Bitcoin's history, and 10 of those 15 have actually closed positively. So that's some pretty easy mental math. 2 out of 3. So that gives us about 66.666, repeating, of course. And if you know where that's from, then we're probably good friends. Also, probably complete fucking nerds too. Anyways, 10 out of 15, 66.66% probability, historically speaking, to close a positive July. But there's a super, super weird statistic that I'm about to share with you right now that I like. Look, I don't know if this matters or not. I'll let you be the judge of this, but it just came up just very, very serendipitously while I was recording this information because, well, it's quite fucking obvious. But I'll bring you back into the chart right here, and I'll just start to go through them, and you're going to see exactly what I'm getting at in just a moment. So if we go back through the past 7 Julys in Bitcoin's history, you'll notice that the month preceding July, June, was always opposite of whatever July was, meaning that in 2024, for example, June was a negative closing month and July was a positive closing month. In 2023, June was a positive closing month and July was a negative closing month. And in 2022, June was a negative closing month and July was a positive closing month. And in 2021, June was a negative closing month and July was a positive closing month. And I'll just cut to the chase here. It was the same thing for 2020, same thing for 2019, even the same thing for 2018. So for the past 7 years, they've always been opposite. Whatever June was, whether positive or negative, July was the opposite. And by the way, we did just see a positive closing June. And as we'll get into a little bit later, this does not mean that Bitcoin can't try a little bit of upside in July. In fact, I think there's actually a pretty good probability Bitcoin will actually go for a new all-time high here as well. Looking at this, we probably expect the month to close a little bit down. Now, this has not been true, obviously, for every July in Bitcoin's history. I did go through all 15, and 11 out of 15 did play out in that fashion where the June, where June was effectively opposite of July. So not always, but very, 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 very often. And for the past 7 years, it's been 100% hit rate, which I do think is interesting because, going back to 2018 is really what I consider like the more modern times of Bitcoin, meaning that times before that is kind of like it's a different thing. It's a different beast. That is, in my opinion, because, well, CME futures were debuted in 2018, and there was, significant structural changes in Bitcoin and just trading in general. general for this sector. Anyways, or asset class, I should say. Anyways, going over some average win returns and average loss returns, on the average win return side for those positive closing Julys, which again, we actually are probably expecting a negative closing July here if the past 7 years or anything to go off of. The average win return for those positive closing one was about 17.5%. The median win return, almost about the same, 16.81, very, very close there. So I do look, let's just call it like 17% or so. We'll look at what that means on price action in just a moment here, but first let's go through the loss side. So the average loss return, which yes, this is more likely to be a losing month, I suppose, if you do look at those stats as relevant right there. Bitcoin has lost on average about 8.81%, and the median loss return was 7% even. So again, very, very close to each other. Let's just mark it to the middle, somewhere around like 8, let's say. So going back into price action, seeing as we already have the open for July, let's see what that would look like on top of current price action. I'll go for the positive side first. Again, we're just going to say it's about 17%, again, on average. And 17%, if Bitcoin were to play out that move to the upside, would put Bitcoin on significantly new all-time highs, 126.5 thousand US dollars, for example. On the other side, 7 or 8% to the downside would put Bitcoin, 7% puts Bitcoin back at around, 100,700. 8% puts Bitcoin back a little bit below 100,000 at 99,200. Again, these are averages and medians. So for the lobotomites out there in the world, don't fucking watch this channel. It's just going to frustrate you because you're a fucking moron and you can't understand statistics, or at least it's not that you can't do it. You're probably a good person, but you just haven't had the training to do so. And I'm having an autistic rage response to this because it's fucking annoying. Again, averages and medians, learn them. In general, statistics I think are the best way to be making decisions just in general. Anyways, I haven't gone through the low of the month and the high of the month data just yet. I'll do that for tomorrow's video. But before that, I want to go over the open to low data for July. I did it again, man. I forgot to update this right here. I can assure you it 100% is data for July. I literally just did it about, like 15 minutes ago. So it's fresh off the fucking press. And by the way, I think that this is probably more important as well. So as always, I like to look at the delta, the difference between the open of July and the low of July, and then bifurcate that data between positive closing Julys and negative closing Julys to see if there's anything of interest here and give us some sort of areas of interest on a potential pullback, whether you be bullish or bearish for this month. Now, for positive closing Julys, we've seen an average of about 12.5% difference between the open and the low, meaning that even though July closed positively, Bitcoin still saw on average about 12.5% move to the downside. Now, the median is much less than that. It's around 6% or 602 if you want to be super exact. And the lowest reads of these is actually 410. Was that a positive? Yes, it was a positive. Now, on the other side, for negative closing Julys, we've seen an average differential between the open and the low of the month at almost 15%, the median coming in at about 12.5%. So let's put those numbers into action here. So even if you are bullish for the month of July, Bitcoin were to play out even a 6% move to the downside, which is very much in alignment with those earlier stats, that would put Bitcoin back to, back around very low 100s, let's call it 101,500-ish region. If it did go for the upper end, closer to the average, then I guess that would be about 12% down, and that would put Bitcoin at around 94 to 95,000 bucks. I just want to be on the record as saying right now, I do think that Bitcoin, it is possible to see mid 90s sometime this current quarter, but I also think that would be very likely like the next major macro low before Bitcoin, really does get ready for a blast to new all-time highs. A nice little busting action going on there. On the other side, let's go over those negative closing months. And sorry, just to, again, go over this data right here for the positive closing months. That means even if you are bullish for July, meaning that you expect this month to close positively, you're still probably looking at least a try down to the low 100s. At least that's not like out of the ordinary or anything crazy or anything like this. Now, on the other side, for the negative closing Julys, which, yes, this month is more likely to close negatively than positively. The average coming in at just under 15%, and the median coming in at 12.5%, almost synonymous with the average for the positive closing Julys, by the way. So perhaps that is a bit of a clue there. We've already done 12.5% to the downside. That's your mid 90s. If we were to see 15%, well, it's not going to be that much more, I guess, but that would be the very, very low 90s, like $91,000. So, I do think that that's kind of worst case scenario for this current quarter coming up. If it happens in July, that would make a lot of sense. And if July closes, negatively, I mean, that's kind of, what you would have expected. But still, can Bitcoin make a new all-time high in July? Well, I've done the same study for this data, but looking at the open versus the high. I'm not going to go through the full thing right here. I'll save that for tomorrow, but I just want to be on the record as saying, even for negative closing Julys, the differential between the open versus the high on average has been just under 8%, and the median is coming in at 4.43. And I want to really put the focus on this here, that even in 2014, which was the smallest differential between the open and the high of the month for a negative closing July, that was still about 3.5%. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because if Bitcoin were to even put in a 3.5% move to the upside, not even getting towards the average or the median, that would put Bitcoin on new all-time highs, about $112,000. If Bitcoin were to obviously go, closer to the average, I think it was what exactly 8%, even 4.5% on the median puts Bitcoin at like 113. So 8% is going to be like 115, I'm guessing. No, much higher than that. 117, 350-ish region, somewhere around there. So yeah, even if you are bearish for the month of July, it's very possible that Bitcoin might see a new all-time high before playing out a pullback. Maybe the pullback comes earlier rather than later. I'm personally of the opinion the pullback will come earlier rather than later. But that I'm not fucking married to that belief, although it does look like that is a little bit more likely here. Regardless, Bitcoin could very easily make a new all-time high and still play out that pullback and still close the month out negatively. Again, those were the negative month closing stats. For the positive side, obviously, it's a lot more. Closer to, or above 20%. So that would obviously put Bitcoin like well above $120,000 if that were to happen. And again, just because the last 7 Julys, did play in that opposite fashion for June or in reference to June, doesn't mean that this one will, of course, but 7 out of 7 times for the past 7 years seems good odds to me. At least I'll put it that way. All right, cool. Got through that. Yes, now let's go over some more higher term time frame stuff here, because we did just have a monthly close. So that means we've got a new month, a new bi-monthly, and a new quarterly. The monthly time frame will actually see stochastic momentum continue to the upside this month, assuming Bitcoin only finishes the month above 95,200. I believe that pivot actually shifted down significantly, which is typically a good sign. But this implies that Bitcoin could come down well below $100,000, even close below $100,000, a negative closing month, and momentum would still be favoring the upside overall coming into August / probably September as well. The quarterly time frame, which also closed last night, is continuing to the upside here. Again, it's in really, really critical territory. How much longer can it keep it up like this? I don't think more than 1 or 2 more periods. So that brings us into at latest the very end of the year, and probably more appropriately, close to the end of September, give or take a month from there. But that one remains up as long as Bitcoin's above 98,500. Again, closing in September. The bi-monthly time frame is going to continue up here, again in really, really critical territory, but that one is pivoted at 101, 138. So yeah, if Bitcoin does pull back, I think the most obvious area of interest is going to be the red 5 EMA on a reconnect for the month of July. That would be down around 101,500. That would be very in alignment with the statistics that we looked at earlier as well, and doesn't really throw anything else off of off kilter there. And then of course, if Bitcoin were to go for the reconnect on the bi-monthly timeframe, doesn't necessarily have to happen this month. Could happen in August instead. But that is all the way down at 96,500. So we're seeing a lot of these numbers kind of stack around the same areas of interest. So, I'll be marking, or perhaps many people will be marking these off. For that reason. The 3-month time frame, the quarterly time frame, also showing the red 5 EMA, which it almost always reconnects with, or if it doesn't, it typically trades sideways without, doing anything significant from open to closure. And that is going to be coming in around like 95,000 bucks. So you see a lot of things stacking up around these same regions. If Bitcoin gets down around these regions, it's almost undoubtedly going to produce a very, very nice, big, massive, girthy bounce. And that'll look overall good. On top of that, when we go over here, I do want to call out something that is very significant and makes me bullish for just generally this quarter, meaning that I think this quarter, this third quarter for Bitcoin, is going to see new all-time highs. I might regret saying this, but almost undoubtedly. Now, what happened here that we have not seen since 2021? Bitcoin on the quarterly time frame did close above the median, just by a ball sack here, but it did do it, and and even though it was a small amount, that has mattered in the past. Now, anytime Bitcoin has actually closed above the median, it's gotten a free ride to the top side of the 38.2 level from there. Now, that one will adjust on the next quarter, so it could very easily come down. But as of right now, it is at 300,000, which is kind of fucking crazy. I would at least be expecting another retest of the median, or close to it. It doesn't need to be super exact, but somewhere in the vicinity of it, somewhere reasonably close to it, which as of right now is $164,920. Now, I'll bring you through the history of this so that you can decide for yourself, because at the end of the day, draw whatever fucking conclusion you want, right? Anyways, the last time that we saw Bitcoin actually reclaim this was back here in July of 2021. Bitcoin closed again a ball sack hair above it. The next quarterly did trade all the way up towards that 38.2 level. Now, to be fair, the one before that in October of 2020, where it did close above right here, you did just see Bitcoin make another move towards the median. So, this probably aligns a little bit better with the one that we're seeing right now, because that median continues, massively up with its curvature there. So looking at our current one, again, even if Bitcoin were to get even close to the median, that's still, 150 to 160,000 bucks. Definitely possible, I guess, in this next 3 months of price action. I would be, to be honest, very surprised if Bitcoin actually did reclaim it and did go for 300,000 bucks, but it'd be a good surprise. I'm not fucking complaining. So maybe some fucking lobotomized morons out there are going to be complaining. Like, you fucking idiot. You said it was going to be this. Like, dude, relax. Okay. Bitcoin's at massively all-time highs. If you own some, you should be happy, for fuck's sake. Anyways, the time before that, this one, tested it all in the same massive green dildo. This was from 2017. And then before, again, the indicator here is not going to work too greatly when it doesn't have that much price action history. But for what it's worth, it was doing the same thing over here. But again, the HPDR really does need more and more history. So, that would be my one major counterpoint to everything that I'm saying right here. As far as the monthly goes, Bitcoin did actually close above the 38.2 level, which is generally good. And while, I could easily see another retest back down around that boundary, which would be about 102.9. Again, short-term bounce area. And if it does come a little bit lower, then 50% level is going to be another area of interest. And for the monthly time frame, the median is coming in at about 146. I don't think Bitcoin's going to get there this month or anything like that. But as long as Bitcoin's above the 38.2 level, generally filling out the space in between here and the median at 145, that makes sense, sets it up for probably that, what I think is probably going to end up being the all-time high, August, September, probably September, honestly. Anyways, yes. Okay. I think we've gone through just about everything. By the way, if you want to try out the HPDR here or any of our tools, by the way, whether it be the quantum wave bands, quant prime for the ultra advanced people out there in the world, you can try out actually all of Caretaker's indicators for free and all of these other packages for free as well for 7 days for any new user. Just follow the teachable link in the description below. Actually, I'll show you a very quick page for it. To be a little bit confusing here as I've been, reorganizing things. But yeah, you get a 7-day free trial. There's no strings attached, no bullshit, no nothing like this. You don't even need a fucking code. It's all good. You can literally sign up 1 second, cancel the next. It's okay. That's what it's for. Try it out. See if it's for you. See if it's not for you. That's the way that I like to market shit, because you wouldn't fucking buy a car without driving it first, right? That's the point of this. So for any new user, you can try it out for 7 days free. And yeah, no strings attached right there. If you like it, stay on. If you don't. It's all good. No one's gonna be mad. Okay. All right. I think that's where we're gonna leave things off for today. Obviously there's no live stream today. I'm going to be saving that perhaps for Thursday, maybe Friday. We'll see what sort of makes most sense with my schedule this week. But one of those 2 days where is where I plan for it. And other than that, I want to wish everyone the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully next time.